tell us about yourself, what motivated you to run for Gilbert Town Council, and what experience you would bring to this role.
Okay, I think I've gone through this a few times now. I think the chamber is pretty familiar. I'm a third generation Tempe kid. Grew up in East Valley. I used to come out over here riding horses and motorcycles in Gilbert for a long time, and joined the military. Served for 24 years in the military. Came back home, and when I was asking, I wanted to come back home to Tempe, and everyone said, "Well, we all live in Gilbert now," which I thought was kind of interesting because at the time I left, Gilbert was a lot of dirt roads and about a 45-minute drive for any of the baseball games we had to come out to. Got originally involved with politics, actually, kind of a recommendation of a friend of mine, Travis Grantham, a state legislator. That, in fact, I just got a chance to see his family the other day while he's serving overseas in Tel Aviv, and I can back that up. Actually, I got involved with it when the town of Gilbert did Operation Welcome Home with Lisa Rigler and Amy Rigler when they recognized me for my military service. So I always felt that I owed Gilbert kind of a payback for what they did for me. And when I had the opportunity to come and serve to replace Eddie Cook in his appointed seat, um, I just felt that that was kind of where I like to serve. It was something that was very natural for me to work and engage with the public.
Excellent. We'll get into our first in-depth question now to the heart.
Okay.
When it comes to economic development and the business environment, what new or existing initiatives would you support to encourage businesses to start, grow, and stay in Gilbert?
Oh, as far as the new initiatives, one of the things that I'm really interested in is, and I've been talking about this. It's actually not new for me, and I've been talking about it. I went and took a look at my comments from 2020 and 2022 elections, and even the videos that were submitted in 2022. It really comes into some of the innovative, what I call destination businesses. And I think that when we talk about raising sales tax, for instance, with something we did recently with TPT tax and the sales tax and bed tax, those taxes, if we don't bring people from outside Gilbert into Gilbert, they're literally a tax on Gilbert residents. And it does come out of the Gilbert pocketbook. So when I take a look at things that we do for business and economic development, a lot of it is going to be what can we do not only to fund what we need to do for our local economy, but how can we actually take money? And it sounds kind of bad, but we're going to be Gilbert centric here. But how do we take money from other people that we can then in turn invest into Gilbert? And so some of these outside investments. And so I look at that as kind of destination businesses. Um, a great example of destination businesses is I look at Joe's Farm Grill and what we've done in the Heritage District. People come to Gilbert for one business opportunity. They have to come here for a medical appointment or whatever they do, but they're in the area and there's a unique business that is only in Gilbert. And so some of these unique businesses are what people drive from Queen Creek and Mason Chandler. And I like that idea of people driving to Gilbert. Um, some of our businesses, and I love Chick-fil-A, but I want to say people don't drive to Gilbert for Chick-fil-A. They're going to drive to the closest Chick-fil-A. So I think that there's an opportunity to be able to exploit some of these destination products that we're able to provide in Gilbert. Um, we do have a lot of unique services, not only just restaurants, but I think that we are doing opportunities with like Northwest Corridor when we start talking about how we redevelop the Northwest Corridor. Some of those businesses may be unique businesses that people drive to Gilbert, and that in turn does feed our tax base. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that would be new and innovative, although it's been something I've talked about for several years.
No, great answer.
Okay.
How would you address any regulatory hurdles or permitting challenges that would come as a part of that?
Oh, this is an ongoing problem, and I kind of smile because regulatory hurdles that we have today, we may solve those, and solve and break down some of those barriers today, only to find out they pop up in a different form tomorrow. So I think the regulatory hurdles that we have is an ongoing communicative process that we need to go with, all the major stakeholders. First of all, addressing the hurdles, we need to find out what they are. We need to find out what's coming, and we also need to address what may be coming that we know doesn't work, and ensure we don't repeat some of the legislative mistakes that maybe we've tried in the past. Every day is unique. Every situation we're experiencing, um, it does kind of bring in what, for instance, rental tax repeal. We would have never seen that coming 5 years ago when we developed an economic plan. So we need to be able to look and be forward thinking as to what these obstacles are going to be and how we're going to address them. I do like the idea that we have such a legislative footprint within not only the Gilbert Chamber but the East Valley Combined Chamber, that goes in more of a predictive way with our legislative, how we're handling those. Excuse, I'm getting a little itch in my throat here. Locally, I think one of the things we do is just a continual reevaluation of what we're doing with our locally generated policies that we can influence really with the vote of just a handful of council members with an idea that maybe we're not doing the things as best as we can. They're good, but maybe they can be better. And it is a continually evolving process that takes the input from all the stakeholders involved to see are there opportunities to be able to improve. Excuse me. One of the things that I look back in 2020, we did for instance, during COVID, when I was on council during that time, we went to the business community to figure out what are the obstacles that are stopping you from innovating during COVID. What do you need to be able to stay in business? Signage, the things we did on relaxing signage, things that we did in COVID that were innovative at the time are now standard practice. You can go through and pick up your groceries at a drive-by. We enhanced the drive-through experience. And I think that that's something that came from the business community that town policymakers took on board and said, hey, this is something we need to stay around. And it does work out really well. So I think the breakdown of the obstacles is going to be less about what I think the obstacles are, more about what the business community thinks the obstacles are. And do we have a process to take in that voice from the business community and really ask the questions again, even if we're good, well, I think we always have an opportunity to be better.
Moving on, the
Mhm.
town council has recently approved significant increases to utility rates. How do you balance infrastructure needs with the financial impact on residents and businesses?
One of my favorite topics to talk about, and I look at utility rates kind of like a whack-a-mole approach to how we need to fund the town. And the bottom line is we got to pay the bills. And it's something that the town just doesn't run for free. We can't go out there and we're not a government doesn't run on solar power. And if it did, that would be fantastic. Um, but if we push back on one revenue stream, it's got to pop up someplace else. And I think the thing that's most important is when we're taking a look at how to fund the town, are we taking a look at every single revenue stream that, first of all, what impacts our residents? Secondly, we really need to take a look at every single possible revenue stream that impacts our businesses. I was not a fan, honestly, of the laundry and car wash, the tax that we wanted to do on coin operated businesses. I thought that the revenue impact was negligible as compared to the impact on those businesses. With the small business especially has such a fine profit margin that that's not the area that we would go to first to try and develop a revenue stream. But there are opportunities that if we look at the cradle to grave, or I guess it'd be from earning to bank account and everywhere in between, where the residents and the businesses have to bring in funding, what can we do from the very beginning? You're not seeing my hands, and I'm a hand talker, so I'm going to try and get that in the screen. Okay, so forgive me. I'd be flapping around if I were there in front of you. But we need to take a look at every single thing that is coming out, not only of the residents' pockets for every little part of a revenue stream that we're trying to develop. But we really, really need to take a look at small business because I don't always think that we look at, oh, it's just easy to arbitrarily say, we'll raise this fee and we'll raise that fee. And the to be able to appreciate the impact of some of these policy decisions on a struggling startup business is something that it's not the right answer to go into one source. And so the number one thing that I think we need to do with all of our revenue streams, and especially utilities, we need to lay it all out. And Scott Anderson asked the question about a year and a half ago. Can I have the total cost? Present to me the total cost. And the staff came back with a partial answer, but the part of the answer the staff didn't come back for that particular question was how does it affect the total Gilbert community, including the business community, the residents, big business, small business? Are we deterring or are we attracting business to coming in with some of these policy statements? Some minor policy statements we make up actually resonate and are heard from the business community as a big deal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I think it's important that we look at every single thing we're doing and what is the total cost of living in Gilbert? What is the total cost of doing business in Gilbert? And are we on par or are we out of touch with maybe our neighboring communities? Are they more attractive because of how they're doing it? So I think real transparency, real analysis on this, and one revenue stream that we pick is not necessarily the best single answer. It's going to be several things. And I do take a look at the stakeholders that are on this call and throughout the chamber. Um, I'm not doing some of the small business. I don't have a restaurant, for instance. Um, why would we raise water utilities on a restaurant? I think it's important that we have clean dishes in a restaurant. So these are some of the things. Now, the startup costs for businesses, raising SDFs arbitrarily and be able to get a business built up may not be the right answer. How can we do economic incentives not only to bring businesses in, but I don't know if there's any Arizona residents that dealt with Farrell's ice cream parlor, but I met Bob Farrell years ago, and he would always say, "Give them the pickle, and they'll be back." And what it talked about was sometimes the little bit of give goes a long way to keep who you got. And so I think that's one of the things that not only do we need to talk about attracting businesses in here, but can we develop the businesses that are here already? Sales tax, I think you all agree that there's a sweet spot on sales tax. If you have 100 businesses and you're taxing them at a certain amount, that's great. You tax them a little bit more, that's okay. But a little bit more, now you start dropping off on your available businesses to be able to tax from. And the overall effect is actually a loss in revenue, even though you think you're raising taxes. So I think that that's the other thing that we need to take a look at is what are we doing to take care of who's here already, from the businesses and the people. And I think the other part of it is people are afraid to spend money, even if they have it. They are really afraid. And so does that fall into the definition of consumer confidence? I'm not sure. But having people not be afraid to spend the discretionary income they have is something that right now there's so much uncertainty, and to alleviate the questions about financial uncertainty from the utility bills, I think it would go a long way to say, hey, I do have some extra money. I'm not going to get clobbered this summer for on the water bill or whatever utility bill. I have a little extra money to go out and buy something, or buy dinner, whatever it may be. So a little long-winded over there. Passionate topic of mine.
Clearly, nothing wrong with that.
Thank you, Bill. As Gilbert approaches build out, what type of businesses or industries should the town actively prioritize or not prioritize? And why?
Oh, I think we should build 100 data centers because everybody loves them. No. I love this question, and I think it's come up for a big topic of discussion when we had the recent target that's up for discussion. I think at the next meeting they're going to be discussing the new target coming in, and it really comes into, like I talked about, and going all the way back into 2020, I liked businesses that are destinations, particularly in the peripheral of Gilbert. It's really easy for Mason, Chandler, and Queen Creek residents to come right across the border and pick up some of our commercial that we have on the borders. Some of our commercial that we have over on Power Road, if we can get them on the west side of the border and spending money instead of the east side of the border or Power Road, that is better. I really like, not only does it match Gilbert's character, but I really like the idea, again, of the destination businesses that come into play, things that make people want to do. Dan Henderson and I used to talk about the 18-hour day, and I think it even goes beyond the 18-hour day. Can somebody come in and do a series of appointments into Gilbert, start out with breakfast and end with dinner, and have everything in between, with not only for their own personal needs, but the needs of their family? Can the wife come in for a doctor's appointment, the husband gets off work, grab the kids, hey, let's go over and we're going to grab food over at Joe's Farm Grill. Those are the destination businesses that I think are fantastic to be able to do it. And the other thing I think is that we should attract businesses that I use. I want to refer back to Deloitte and when I talked with Matt back then, but it was some of these businesses are going to be kind of your steady eddies. They're always going to be, the combination, just like your investment portfolio. You're going to need some of the businesses that are always going to be predictable and not necessarily recession proof or resistant to perturbations in our economic flavor of the day, if you will. There are some things that are just always going to be a steady revenue stream, and there's other things that are going to be the destination part of it. So I would like to see, I love Silent Air. I think that's something that's always going to be in Gilbert doing something. I think our healthcare programs are something that we have some top-notch healthcare services. I just had surgery. I didn't tell anybody I had surgery because I didn't want it to be in the paper, but I went through in 6 hours after surgery, I was actually stomping signatures and my doctor got mad at me. But we have some fantastic medical services in Gilbert. But now that we have some of these, the hotels that are coming back up, it's entirely feasible. Instead of people going up to Mayo Clinic and staying up over there, why not have your medical procedures done over here, stay the night in a hotel, have your family take care of you? So I see a more of a holistic approach to Gilbert being not just that 18-hour experience, but maybe the 2 or 3 day experience. I tried to recommend. I have a friend of mine who's she's the Olympic volleyball champion. She wanted to do volleyball tournaments 4 times a year in Gilbert. I thought that would be, oh, great. You want to do a national tournament 4 times a year in Gilbert? Game on. We don't have to water sand. It doesn't have any infrastructure costs to it and stuff. And so I like what we're doing with some of our parks to be able to bring in people that not only do they want to stay here for the 18 hours, but maybe they want to stay here for the weekend. I have a dear friend of mine from San Diego coming out to visit their children. They're staying for 4 days. That's kind of the thing that I think that Gilbert has that's unique. Tempe used to have it. They don't really have it. I'm a Tempe kid, so I can kind of poke Tempe. And Scottsdale does have it, but why not Gilbert? And that was actually my motto in 2020 when we were talking about, how to rebound from COVID. And I said, rebounding Gilbert was my motto back then. But why not Gilbert was what I was saying on the campaign trail back in those days. Why not Gilbert? And there's no reason why Gilbert can't be that destination, not only for businesses to come here and do business, but for people to come through to those unique companies and stay here and spend their money here.
Well, building on that same question, what do you think redevelopment should play in Gilbert's future? And what outcomes would you hope to see from that effort?
I don't know if you've driven the Northwest Corridor recently, and I used to go drive that. Redevelopment. We have some great opportunities that even when I was talking about it a couple of years ago, redevelopment in some of these other areas. The fact of the matter is there is going to be a time. There's going to be a Gilbert 100 more years from now where Gilbert's not going to be the standard 3-story buildings or 2-story buildings that we see. As we know, in any municipal area, as growth comes out. You knock down and rebuild. By the way, I used to fail miserably at SimCity because I wanted to build the big skyscrapers right off the bat and not recognizing you've got to start small, knock it down, grow a little bit more, knock it down, grow a little bit more. And we have some great opportunities. And I love the Northwest Corridor as an example of that, because just as I was talking about with business opportunities where we want to pull in people from out of the business, if we can redevelop over there, and there's some infrastructure challenges, pretty significant infrastructure challenges over there between, just even providing fire services. The roads are narrow, parking's not out over there. But I think that we have some great opportunities with redevelopment in that area specifically to be able to rebuild, but rebuild with an eye on the future, not just rebuild with an eye on the now and be able to get, that light industrial, unique business out here. But is it possible? And these are just kind of crazy ideas. Is it possible to attract that big fish that sees the opportunity that we can knock down this plaza that's a little dilapidated? We need to go through and upgrade some infrastructure. Can we get something that brings in these steady Eddie unique businesses that come into that are looking for a home and looking for a place to call home? I don't see any reason. I don't see any reason why. Now, don't quote me on this one over here because Tempe, I grew up, I went to school with Mike Monty. Monty's the Casa Vieja, and Tempe and Millen Avenue was just nothing but 2-story buildings. And now I look out there and you got these huge, tall buildings out over there. And I would have never guessed when I was a boy roller skating at ASU that that's what I would have experienced. That's the fact of Gilbert. Now, do we want to build the skyscrapers in Northwest Corridor or anywhere in Gilbert? I'm going to say no, but we do have the opportunity to do 2 or 3-story buildings over there. We can attract some more of the professional businesses. We can attract some of the more higher volume industrial businesses that are just looking for infrastructure to be built out. Why should we guess what these businesses need for infrastructure? Why not get the business and work with them on building the infrastructure so that we can work in a little bit more of a cooperative process between the town and the stakeholders, and we can build the suit from the beginning of our infrastructure rebuild in those areas and get some of those areas, or get some of the businesses that'll be here for quite a while. Hope that answers your question there.
It does. Thank you. Going to switch things up a little bit. Town leadership.
Yes.
With transition in town leadership, including the departure of town manager, how will you help ensure stability and effective governance during this period?
A number one thing, I think we just need to restore. We need to restore confidence that our leaders are there for the people and for the businesses. Really, and we say in this environment and for this interview, we need to ensure that the leadership is there with the best interest of all stakeholders. It's easy to say, as an elected official, we have to take care of the residents, but it really is everybody that needs to understand that the leadership is there trying to serve in the best interest of that. So I think that restoring confidence, and confidence is going to be restored primarily with just an extreme amount of transparency, more than we've ever had to go through and do before. Patrick was somebody. I don't know if anyone knows. Patrick's dad was an old retired Master Chief, and me being a retired naval officer, I understood how Patrick thought. His upbringing was very, very much with my job, and we kind of clicked in some of those mindsets. Some people think that when people leave, that you're losing this great amount of institutional knowledge, and I have to remind people that on an aircraft carrier, a $5 to $8 billion project, the commanding officers are jet pilots, and they leave every 18 to 24 months. And change is good because it allows for us to go through and say, we did all these things right, let's keep those, and we could have done these other things better. And change allows for some of these to be a little bit more palatable and more understood by the people. Little heartbroken with some of the people that are leaving. I didn't want to see Dan Henderson leave. I had Mary Goodman. I was really looking forward to the opportunity of being able to work with her again. I think she's a rock star. And I think Patrick's going to do fantastic things in Glendale. And even though I'm personally feeling some of the pain of those losses, if we've ever created a single point failure in town leadership, we've failed to develop the people beneath them. And I think that we've seen that recently with Dawn coming up into the town manager role and some of the other movements that we've been able to do. The number one thing is to promote the sense of stability and reassure the public. I think we need to really talk twice, if not three times as much, about that the town is working in the best interest of all stakeholders, and just continue to reiterate that with a very, very aggressive, led by public officials as well as the business people. We're safe in Gilbert, and it's good, and this isn't a problem. We can work through this, and it's going to be even better. Gilbert 2.0 is going to be better than Gilbert first time around.
Well, Bill, as we have 8 minutes left here, Gilbert has a large and growing municipal budget. How will you approach budgeting and prioritization to ensure responsible spending while supporting essential services and economic growth?
I'll tell you, our budget is, my budget was 980, I think it was $984 million when I was on council in 2020. And this last one's about 2.46 to somewhere around about $2.4 billion. And there are a lot of questions I have, and I read way too much, and I've studied the growth of the budget over the last several years, and I understand a lot of the things, and I understand the investment in capital and the whole strategies of how ensuring that you're investing at a rate that equals our depreciation rate of the infrastructure that we have. And there's some things. The number one thing there is that we do need to take a look at what are our predictable revenue streams. Just because we have some financial goals that we need to do with a very large and robust budget, we do need to take a step back and ask the hard questions. Do we need to jeopardize our revenue streams and the people who pay into the revenue streams to be able to facilitate the budget, or do we need to jeopardize the budget so that we can stay within our revenue streams? Because who's in between the revenue stream and the budget? It's business and taxpayers. And that's something we really, really need to take in consideration. So I think that taking a hard look, one of the things that I used to talk about when I was on council is sometimes moving things to the left is cheaper than moving projects to the right. It's level loading of resources and expenditures, and we've seen resource constraints throughout the country, and especially in Gilbert. North Water Treatment Plant obviously is something I fought very hard to try and get that started earlier than later because I didn't want to be pinched up against the wall. So I think that taking a hard look on some of these things, it is entirely possible that there are some projects that we need to leave the shovels in the ground for a year, just a pause to say, let's catch our breath over here, because if we don't do that, are we going to overburden business? Are we going to overburden the taxpayers to be able to keep this timeline and keep this pace? I don't have, unfortunately. I'm eager to look at this next budget, and I've asked Kelly Foss. I got an interview with her to be able to ask these exact same questions. I don't have the insight yet to see where those opportunities are. But I'll tell you what, if there's something that I see, Eric, you and I have talked several times about it, as well as, several faces on here and several people in the chamber. Whereas I can speak on my behalf and I can speak on the residents that I met when I was on the campaign, doing signatures. I talked with thousands of residents. I can tell you I didn't talk with thousands of businesses because businesses don't sign my petitions. But I hope to. I think, Gilbert, what are we up to? 670-ish members of the chamber. And I think that that's where the chamber is able to come in. If we are pinched on the budget, the question needs to be, well, business, where do you want us to look? And what's going to impact your business? Because we can't do anything that impacts your businesses.
Well, to that point, because the last two questions center a little bit around this too. Um, what responsibility do elected officials have in setting the tone for respectful discourse, and how do you model that in your interactions?
It is very challenging in today's environment, and I'll tell you that I think the last few years have been probably the biggest challenge that many of us have seen in quite a while, and a lot of it, I believe, has to do with what came out of COVID. We had a lot of things happen in COVID. We had a complete reconstruction of what we do as a society, as our local community, what we're doing with the way we work, where our workforce comes from, the way we're doing business. We're online or brick and mortar, and we see shifts in all that. I really think that one of the big things is you can't, in my opinion, you can't not have hard discussions. You need to encourage the hard discussions. The question is, where do you have these hard discussions? How do you have these hard discussions? Um, I really want to see something. And as we talk about discourse and disagreement and the issues, I would love, God, town halls are free. Can we have town halls with two-way dialogues? And I like the way we did it with when we had the working group for teen violence, where people were able to come out. And the number one thing, and I talked about this on the podcast, people want to be heard. They want to feel, and not even be heard. That's the wrong way of saying it. People want to feel heard. And how do we do that from the town's perspective? You provide every opportunity to let people talk and talk and talk. And you have to come through and say, repeat back. It's communication 101. It's not going to be rocket science on this. But I think that we have opportunities to increase and re-implement the things we did during COVID that were very similar to what we're dealing now. The public's frustrated. And we did listening sessions, a lot of listening sessions. We had a lot of town halls. We had a lot of two-way communication, not limited by 3 minutes at the podium. And I would like to see us kind of go back to what we knew worked at the last time, that we were having a really hard time grasping with things that we feel are out of our control. And really, I think people just want to feel I'm heard. They understand what I'm saying, and they are doing their best to balance out all the stakeholders and take action in that way. So,
Well,
go
and
ahead.
answering what you answered, like kind of to what you alluded before, is your partnership with the chamber and other
Mhm.
businesses. What does a strong, effective partnership with the chamber look like in practice, and how would you engage with the business community if elected?
I'll tell you, one of the things, and I was blessed that I've had a lot of chamber support over the years, and with my endorsements. I like the videos we did last time. That was a lot of fun for me. So a little heartbroken that I can't do my stomping around town with my video camera, but that's okay. I get this opportunity. Um, I love what the chamber does. More importantly, not only does the chamber have that small town, and I hesitate to say small town because the chamber at 670-ish, under 1,000, and I don't know what the ambitions are for the chamber. Um, but what I like that the chamber does is that the chamber communicates regionally and throughout the state. And there's a couple of groups of people that are the leading edge of what is about to come. Realtors, interestingly enough, kind of know what's happening because their friends say, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling my house." Well, and I would have to ask, why are you thinking about selling your house? Give Gilbert a little chance. So realtors and the chamber, I think, are uniquely positioned to know the leading edge of thought in what's happening to it. And that's a very, very critical and incredibly valuable um, resource as an elected official, to have that strong communication. Not necessarily, and I do the things. I was just at the Veterans in Business thing over at the American Legion. And, that was great. And there's a lot of communication there. But I'll tell you where I think it really happens is I think some of the roundtables that we have. And I also think that what you're doing with the policy group, and I know that you have the elected people that come in with the policy group. What I don't know about those meetings is, are they really robust really communicative? Are you throwing everything down on the table, being really transparent and saying, let's pick these things up? And I had a lot of corporate team building stuff where I'm taking 300 people from all sectors of the defense industry, and how can we come up with 3 great ideas from 300 people? And it's distilling down to the low hanging fruit. And I think that that's one of the things that, as an elected official representing the people and representing the capabilities and the resources that the town can bring to the table, the chamber, and then other stakeholders that can all come together and really have productive brainstorming sessions where people don't get offended if their idea is not taken, but we do have the ability to grab 2 or 3 low pieces of low hanging fruit each year and executing that, and permission granted to, let's take a chance on this. And if it doesn't work, well, we can always change our plan and do something differently. But it's going to be a very robust, very honest discussion with the people that have their finger on the pulse of the business community and the residents.